I've seen some amazing things that AI has been able to do. But sitting down with Dr. Serena Huang, a data scientist and AI expert, made me realize AI has been playing a vital role in human life and survival for decades in ways we didn't even know about. From analyzing medical records to therapy to predicting human behavior, AI is so ingrained in our daily life, we don't even notice it. And Dr. Serena was the analytics leader of PayPal, GE, and Kraft Heinz. If anybody knows about data and AI, it's her. In this interview, she clarified how AI isn't just a recent trend, how we can avoid it if we want to, how we can train it to avoid it being misused, and of course, how it will really affect movies, music, art, and artists. Can it really take the place of some of the greatest artists of all time someday? I also asked her what's been bugging me for a while now, and that is based on the years of her collecting data, interpreting it, and building AI. Are humans really as unpredictable and unique as we think we are? Watch the interview to know the answer. Okay, thank you for coming on, Dr. Serena.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, there's a lot of interesting questions, so I will just get right onto it. I know that you have been in the data and AI space for a bit, but just to give our audience a peek on maybe your recent background, like what are the things that you're doing? Can you talk a little bit about what you are into?
Yeah, of course. So I spent years as the head of analytics in large companies like PayPal, Kraft Heinz, GE, and recently, with the interest in AI, I launched my own company to help the world learn more about how to get the most out of data as an asset and how to use AI to its fullest extent, but in a responsible way. So I partner with a lot of different companies and help them use AI and data within their own organization. But then
Mhm.
sometimes there are companies that create their own AI, right?
Right,
And teach
right.
them how to use that as well.
Okay. Well, now that you mentioned it, you said that you've been in big organizations that are actually using AI, and we know that it has been around for a while. There is just
Yes.
this misconception that it's new, that people just the word that is just being, and I personally am surprised when people say that. Like, I was like, we've been using it for a while. Like, I don't think there's any technology now without AI. So we'll get into the background of AI, but first let me ask about the organizations with such huge organizations, and mostly there are very few AI experts or people who
Right.
actually understands in the management team or the board of directors, those that are really affecting organizations. So how how is it, how can you affect their decision making so that they're not just guided by money, and we understand that they are guided by money,
Yeah.
so that they can still consider the ethical implication of what they're going to do?
Yeah, it's a tough balance, right? And I think they have to some extent, be guided by money because if they aren't, then the
Yes.
company goes out of business and none of us has jobs, right?
Yeah.
Yes. But I think the key part is thinking about AI and data really as strategic assets and liability.
Mhm.
And this is what people don't sometimes think about AI, where hey, it's actually an asset. Of course, we know that the more data you have, the more likely you can, create value out of this, whether it's selling it the data directly to customers or using insights from those data. But we don't always think about data and AI sometimes even as liability, because having access to data can create a risk for board of directors, for CEOs, and that's something I encourage leaders to also think about. How do you protect that data? How do you protect the privacy of people behind that data? So you have to think about it in both ways, and that's where ethics and responsibility comes in really nicely. Once they're able to see data and AI both as a strategic asset and a liability, or can be a liability, then it opens their eyes to understanding it better, understanding how to protect it so that you can protect the value you're creating from these really valuable things.
Right.
So yeah, it's not easy, and I think with some of the scandals that we have seen where data breaches and cybersecurity issues and deep fakes, now leadership teams are starting to understand the real risk is there. And I don't think any CEO or the board need to learn how to build AI anytime soon, but I think they need to understand how AI works well enough to know where the value is and how to create more of it and where the risks potentially lie.
Okay. So you don't have to name names. I know that there's a lot of confidentiality that goes into your work, but how much of the big corporations, how much of our data do they actually have? To what extent of us do they know?
Gosh, all of it. Honestly, all of it. Anytime you signed up, anything with your email where you get points for something, they have
Yeah.
your data, right? The entire purchase history, what you like, what you didn't like, and so we do that because we are trading that convenience and those points for potential value, right? A discount potentially, maybe
Right.
more tailored coupons or something like that,
Right. Right.
and maybe recommendations of future things that I might like to buy so that I'm saving time. and
Right.
and so we're trading that. I think anytime, like I said, I'm an economist by trade, so I stand by there's no such thing as free lunch. And anytime
Right.
you're giving away something like an
Yes.
email address or phone number, make sure that you know what you're giving up, and then you do the math in your head, right? Is what I'm getting back really worth it, or should I opt out of it? So yes, so a lot of organizations now know so much about us, right? Including things that we buy, maybe even things we don't buy, right? Like here's what we started to see in different platforms. It will serve up a recommendation, like suggested product, right? Suggested service. And then every time you swipe away really quickly, that's a data point that they gather from you. Okay, Serena did not like that.
Right.
So it's not just things that you're actively doing, it's also things that you're not doing.
Okay. So in that case, is there a way to get away from it all? Like if I just really want to live a quiet life and not have anybody be in my business, is there a way to get away
Sure.
from it all?
Yes, sure. If you want to, go buy your own island and then run your own internet that's close on the island, sure. And you have 10 years worth of supply of everything.
Right.
No, it's very hard, right? And I think something that we may not realize is the people who are connected with us too, that they might be giving away information about us
Right.
without our consent, and maybe even unintentionally. Like think about back in the days when people were on Facebook posting pictures and they tag their friends, right? And they're
Right.
tagging, and you can still do this in other platforms today. It wasn't just Facebook at the time. But remember the shock people had when it started to recognize faces, and it's like, oh my
Right.
god, it knows my data.
Right.
And now all the devices do that automatically, and it's nearly impossible to opt out. And even if you do, your friends or your grandparents may not, and therefore you are sort of opted back in, even if you want to be opted out. So there's a lot of data of us out there that we have to be very mindful of. And I think education goes a long way, and that's why I started to do a lot of AI literacy training for different organizations. Is that we
Right.
need to know ultimately you can't have AI without data. So
Okay.
where does data come from? And really be mindful of that privacy.
Right. Okay. So you just mentioned you touched on the history, kind of the history of AI. Like way back when we already knew that Facebook were using facial recognition, and now
Yes.
everything is basically using
Yep.
it. Um, is Can you just discuss a little bit? As I've mentioned earlier, a lot of people think that AI is recent.
Yeah.
Well, it isn't. It's been
Yeah,
around for a
I
while.
mean, right. So the AI that we know today is only recently become accessible to us. That's the biggest difference. It was always there, but it wasn't accessible to everyone. And it really similar to kind of Siri, Alexa, and the chatbots that we are so used to today. It started back in the 60s. 50s and 60s, like
Oh,
in the 60s, the very first chatbot, her name, its name is Eliza. And guess what Eliza does? Eliza is a therapist. So
what?
imagine, yeah, so the first AI chatbot was a therapist that was trained on doctor's notes. And why was it so innovative at the time? It was like the first time someone was able to get the machine to talk in a way that gets the conversation going. So it was trained on a specific psychotherapist whose style was like asking a lot of questions, making you think and making you reflect, which is not atypical. But at the time, this machine then got all this data. For example, if you tell me that I feel sad or I feel anxious, the response from this real human doctor will be, tell me more. Why do you feel sad? Why do you feel anxious? What do you feel anxious about? And then that response then gets you going, right? Then you talk more and you share. So that was the very simple at the time design, but very hard to implement. So it would pick out keywords like "I am sad," and then you will repeat back, "Why are you sad?" And it was very simple programming,
Mhm.
but it was for the first time people are able to have dialogues with this machine in 1966.
Right.
So so that was the initial AI, and then came, many years later, things like IBM Watson that was playing
Yeah.
chess, and the ones that we get to talk to and we're more used to today, like Alexa, Siri, and different voice recognition bots.
Right.
And then now the text, which is getting smarter and smarter because it's able to consume different formats. So it's not just the text, it's not just the voice, but it's also image. It's also like you can upload a receipt and tell it to summarize the numbers for you.
Right. Right.
Just smarter now. But yeah,
Right.
1966 is when Eliza was born.
Okay. And in the medical field, no less. Oh my
Yes,
God.
right? Yeah, think about the privacy implications.
I Okay. So, well, is there, based on what you know, I know you're not a lawyer and legal field is not your expertise, but just based from your perspective, do we have enough legislation that will protect people's data, or our interest in general? I hate to use this word, but against AI or against the people that are manipulating AI.
It's very hard to say. I think what I've recognized is that every region and every country now has some different type of AI regulation, and they're all very different. So, for example, in the EU, the citizens of EU are much more protected
Mm-hmm.
under their laws than those in the US. And it's a drastically different in terms of the philosophy behind those regulations. So EU's recent AI Act, for example, categorizes AI systems into different risk levels. And if you're making assessments on hiring using AI, for example, that's pretty risky, but it's not as much as like if you're making a sentencing decision using
Right.
AI or surveillance on people, that's very high risk. And then for violations, depending on the level, the fines are huge. And so in the US, we've been talking about adopting something similar for quite a while, but it hasn't happened yet. It's definitely in discussion. And I think as it stands today, it's up to us to really protect ourselves and learn more about what data is being gathered, how is it going to be used, and ask those critical questions back before we give our data away, because it's just really hard once it's out there. You can't get it back.
Right, right, right. Is who's spearheading it? Is there an organization that's trying to help our senators craft the right legislation
Yeah,
for it?
There are so many organizations. Actually, there are
Mhm.
lots of different organizations, and they tend to partner with kind of a combination of nonprofits and academia, academic researchers, and that try to influence decisions in the government, along with actually tech companies. You might think, hey, they have a conflict of interest, and some of them
Right.
do. Right,
Yeah.
but they also happen to know a lot about how technology works, so they have to be in the discussion. And I think that's ultimately the best combination, where you have public and private sector working together, along with the cutting edge research from academia, so they know what might be coming that hasn't been implemented yet. But research has shown we can do X, Y, and Z probably in 5 years. Let's get them into the conversation before it's too late. And I think one particular area that's now we're starting to see a lot of regulation on in schools is
Yeah.
how to protect teenagers and children from from AI, right, and social media, for example. Even a simple thing like putting a filter on your face, right? Like we thought about it before. It's like, oh, this is just a funny filter. Like I can have rabbit ears, or like, hey, I didn't put enough makeup on today. I want to look nicer. Like that seems great. But then when it's applied in the world of children, for example, who may have already body image issues, and now suddenly they can't see themselves without a filter, they don't feel beautiful without the filters.
Right.
Now you've got a problem. And so I think there's a lot of things that we're discussing. I'm glad to see some movement in that space, including things like schools banning phones during school
Right.
time, right?
Right.
That screen time's impact on children, we already know it's terrible. So yeah, so I think we got ways to go, but things are starting to change. And I hope what we'll do is we start to learn from European countries, for example.
You're right. Dr. Serena, you're frozen. Oh, I lost you.
Okay.
Okay,
All
you
right.
were talking about, we can pick up from what you were saying. You
Yeah.
said the last I think you can pick up from would be
Yeah.
maybe we can pick up from European countries.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I think we need to start thinking about how we can learn from other countries that have implemented maybe stricter regulations, and what they are learning from it. Does it really restrict innovation, right? Which is the argument against having regulation, or does it really go far and protect the citizens? So we need to learn where they land, and form our narrative going forward.
Right. Well, though I think one main issue that many people are realizing is the fact that AI is being trained by humans, right? That's basically what
Yes.
they're trying. Now humans are training AI. The thing is that it is being trained by the louder majority. Well,
Yes.
the louder minority, not necessarily the equipped or the knowledgeable. So can, then can it learn the wrong thing then? If all it is hearing and learning about are the same information from one person or one group, then can it be biased?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's why it's so important for AI teams to have different perspectives and people from different backgrounds. Because ultimately, AI is, again, you can't have AI without data. So we have to see where biases are potentially in the data itself. Like you said, is it representing only the majority of voices? Is it representing pretty much the same opinions, regardless of what people look like? But maybe it's the same thought over and over again.
Yeah.
And we don't have anything from people from different backgrounds, a minority, whether they are, people who are born outside of this country, maybe people who are not native speakers, and therefore there's less data on them speaking, right? Imagine that. That's probably pretty natural. But then now you have a data set that is biased, and you only hear from people who were born in this country, native speakers, and they have very similar perspectives. So AI can definitely learn the wrong things. Well, let's just say AI can only learn from the data that you feed it. So we
Right.
have to be. careful on how we train the data, train the algorithms in the first place.
Okay, then, what can we do then to make sure it is trained the right way? If we're just ordinary people, we're not legislators or engineers or whatever, how can we help, or how can we make sure that we're training it the right way?
Yeah, I think there are sort of less technical things that we can easily detect, right? If you ask a somewhat controversial question to an AI, you can
Mhm.
observe what kind of response you get, right?
Right.
And one of my favorite prompts to ask back is, "Are you sure?" So literally asking, "Are you sure?" Forces the AI to search for slightly different responses. And if you do this multiple times and it's coming out with something similar, that you know that it doesn't have any diverse perspectives in the training data, and therefore you're going to get very similar responses. And I think those are just ways that we really practice our critical thinking, is
Mhm.
that we don't take everything AI tells us as the ultimate truth, but we're questioning it and we're asking the logic. The other thing you can do is ask AI to explain the logic, and that works wonders,
Mm.
right? So anytime you ask a question, you can add, "And please explain the logic," right?
Right.
And then, or you can say, explain details, step by step logic, and it will tell you how it does that. Some of the AI models today does that in more transparent ways, and you can always ask to see, one, if you agree with it. First of all, before you choose to adopt the conclusion, and then two, you can recognize the biases potentially by
Mhm.
that logic, right? If it's only sourcing certain documents, if it's only looking at certain websites, and you can ask it to provide sources, right? Like provide support, provide data to support your conclusion. And then you can check those sources for yourself to see whether or not you agree, and whether or not there's potential biases.
Okay. Do you think eventually, just on your based on your opinion, do you think AI is going to eventually replace search like Google and Bing, DuckDuckGo?
It, gosh, it has already started to,
Oh, yeah,
quite
yeah.
significantly. Yeah, I've talked to a lot of people who said they replaced the app with an AI that they now use for any sort of research. But here's the thing: I think what Google is doing to fight back, of course, is with its own AI model,
Hmm.
Gemini. So
Right.
Gemini recently released deep research in
Mhm.
trying to be competitive on the market, where Perplexity is for quite a while being known as the top research AI, right? And it gives you all the resources, like where which articles it's citing from, and now Gemini can do the same from Google. So I think what Google is hoping for, again, I don't work there, I'm not affiliated with that, but my guess would be, hey, we're losing people on the search. Let's guide them to use our AI platform for search that they need to do. And like, think about even social media platforms, right? If you're searching for things to buy, it
Hmm.
is it is very rare that you have to like go out to Google and search for things to buy. Right? Like
Right.
Amazon app recommends to you based on your history, right?
Right.
And Instagram and other apps will make recommendations based on things that you like. It could be a type of food that you clicked on, right? You gave it a heart. Next time you're like, oh, you like pasta. Here's some pasta for
Right.
you to buy from the grocery store. Oh, you didn't like that? Let me suggest Italian restaurants. Would you like to make a reservation? So all of that is now within the app itself. So I definitely see a lot of the different pieces of what we use Google for is going somewhere else. And it will be interesting to see how their AI can continue to potentially gain market share back.
Right. Right. Okay. So this, all of these things, a little easier for me to get my head around on, because they're sort of not really exact science, but it's quantitative for the most part. What really puzzles me is AI and art, music, you
Yeah.
know, writing and whatever. So, okay, so I train AI to think the way I think so that it can help me in writing, for example. Number one, can it then potentially become a better writer than I am?
Depends on what you are writing. I
Okay.
think if your writing is very technical, for example, very logical, very technical, then there's a chance that AI can do a great job, right? Depending on what access, what kind of technical topics you talk about. But for that really creative writing, though, like a great novel, it's very hard for AI to be more creative than humans. So yes, in some ways, AI does have access to a vast amount of data stories out there, and then they can kind of combine it and generate it, and it's a different story. But ultimately, it's not completely original thought. Only humans, we can have that original thought.
Mm-hmm.
So the next Harry Potter, for
Mm-hmm.
example,
Right.
right, probably not written by AI. And but that also mean, right, that doesn't mean all of us can write the next Harry Potter,
Right.
either. And but I think there's a lot of potential for AI to start replacing at least the tasks that we're doing today, as an artist, as a writer, and gosh, even emails, right? Like so many
Right.
people have told me the number one use case is write emails with using Gen AI. And you
Right.
give it a few bullets and it turns into a nice email. You're having a tough conversation with your mom, you ask Gen AI for help, make it nicer, right? Like
Right.
all these things are super helpful. Does it mean AI is a better writer than you? Maybe. Maybe it just has access to a different set of writing that you don't have access to, and so it's helping you in that way. But as far as original thinking and original creativity, it's still up to us to potentially write the next Harry Potter.
Right. Right. That's interesting. And I think you're the very first person who told me that AI cannot create original thoughts. Because it seems like a lot of people are just like, oh, they're going to be writing the next big Hollywood script or the next Harry Potter. And I'm like, really? If it learns from me, where is it going to learn the original one if I'm not teaching it? That's what I always thought.
Right.
But people would just tell me
Yeah.
that no, eventually it's going to. So I'm actually happy to hear that from you.
Yeah,
As a
I mean,
creative
maybe
person.
eventually. Yes, yes, maybe eventually. But yes, no, right now, right? So how Gen AI works, like the generative nature is essentially it's looking at the words that you put in, and it's predicting. What it's predicting is the most likely word that comes next after what you said, right? So, for
Right.
example, if I say how are you, right, it knows pretty much the response should be I am something. And then so it's like assigning some sort of probability, right? So I am, AI is pretty certain it's going to be I am. But after that, maybe it's a split 50-50 between fine and okay.
Right. Right. Right.
And then so that's where the randomness of Gen AI comes in. That's why when you type in even the same prompt or same question, you don't get the same response each time, right? Because it's not doing some sort of matching a one-to-one. When you say how are you, it always comes back with I am fine. It comes back with I am something. And so that, yes, it's generating something that feels like it's creative and it's original, but it's simply predicting what is most likely to be the next word, the next sentence for you,
Okay.
or the
So
next image.
right, right. So, so it is possible, for example, for the AI that I train. If I'm a better, this is just an example. If I'm a better writer than a specific composer, for example, I'm a better lyricist. So the AI that I train can actually be better than that lyricist if I am
Ooh,
better
yeah.
in nature, because this is what I've trained, right? I've trained my AI and I'm better.
Yes, yes.
Ah, okay, okay. So it is possible then for songs to be written entirely by AI based on my sensibility.
Yes, and you get to decide whether or not that's a good thing or not. I think ultimately the human and AI combination and collaboration will be the best outcome. It will be better than AI alone, and you'll be better than human alone. And but it's up to us to figure out how we actually collaborate with AI. And very early on, when ChatGPT came out, I actually used my own writing and my own, blogs and speech to train a little career coaching bot, because I got tired of people asking me the same questions, right? And so I use a very, simple framework. Like, my approach is, you have the answers in you, and here are the 5 questions that you should ask yourself to, to guide yourself to the next steps. Is by asking what brings you joy. Is bring what do people like to pay you for? What do people what When are you surprised by feedback? What are those like? And like, kind of a reflective process, if you will.
Mhm.
And I got tired of those virtual coffees where I was saying exactly the same thing,
Same
and then
thing.
I just send them to my bot. And they said, hey, it really sounds like you. Well, of course it sounds like me. It's trained on my speech and my writing,
Right.
not assisted with AI. So yeah, there are lots of potentials with this, where we can start to collaborate with AI better and produce better outcomes.
Okay. So I know you're not an expert in the entertainment field, but just based on your what you see, what jobs in the creative field do you think AI will replace?
Yeah, it's so even though I'm not in the entertainment industry for sure, I am a creator.
Mhm.
So I create content on a daily basis on different platforms. And one of the things I definitely started to notice is editing is starting to get really easy with AI. So
Okay.
content creation, a creation of some sort, from like an idea of a few bullets to full blown, AI generated video, audio with caption, animation, B-roll. That is all very easy with AI now. So I think anyone who's doing those jobs are certainly at risk. And then also on the back end, right? Like, not the back end, like after that, sort of post production editing. A lot of that used to be, very manual and very time consuming, and now, you can get a pretty decent quality of video within seconds by AI.
Right.
And so I think that basic to even medium level of editing is going to be really tough. And I started to hear from people I know that they can't get gigs anymore. That it's really hard for them to find those jobs because everyone's using AI to do it. And here's the thing: if you want that Hollywood quality, you probably still need the experts to do the editing, the directing, all of it. But if you just want like YouTube quality, even really solid YouTube quality, right? Um, you can get AI to help you with that. So I think it's impacting at least in the low and medium end, part of the editing, and that's a lot of people, right? Think
A
about
lot.
it. It's like it's audio engineering too, right? I remember the other day I got a trial to an AI that was able to remove the noise in the background from my speech. Oh my god, 3 seconds, no joke. The noise was
My
gone.
God.
Was in a very noisy room, and I thought, oh man, that this is one of the things I didn't learn as a creator was, how to clean up audio files. Like, my friend was trying to teach me, I found it really hard, and I gave up. But now, one button, I'm done.
Right. Right.
And so I think there's a ton of that where when we used to use humans to polish something, that work is now outsourced to AI.
Right.
Years ago it was outsourced to different countries, right, where
Right.
labor was cheaper, and now it's outsourced directly to AI.
Okay. So then, since you're already also very much involved in HR, in companies, what would you then advise these people who's getting displaced by AI? What can they do?
Oh, I think first of all, focus on what skills you have that are transferable to another job. Like, focus on the skills that you already have. So if editing is what you were doing before, what else do you do, right? You must do more than one thing. and focus on those transferable skill sets. Maybe you also dabbled in something along with like marketing as you were doing those things. Maybe you got into social media, and and that could be a skill set. Maybe it's digital marketing that you pivot to. So think about your transferable skills and start to plan for the pivot. I highly recommend people to actually start networking. So this is a very non-AI thing to do. But
Mhm.
because the job market is so tough, like the job market is just wild right now.
Right.
There with AI's impact as well, right? With lots of people starting to get displaced and the tech layoffs that flooded the market. But now, even worse, we have AI that can apply for jobs on your behalf, like thousands of them at once. You upload one resume and you're like, here are the 5 industries I'm interested in. It's tailoring your resume automatically. It's feeding them to the annoying ATS. It's filling
Yeah.
out profiles for you, right? Thousands
Yeah.
at once. So now we have to compete with that. So I think just be mindful of just how competitive and AI driven this whole market has become. And how do you beat that? You beat that by being more human. What does it mean to be more human? Is
Mm,
you have to know people inside the company.
mm,
Hopefully, the hiring manager, maybe not today, but someone who might be hiring in the future. Because like, and I share this, even when I was hiring before the AI craze in big companies. Every job I post will have 1,000 plus applications within a day. Okay,
mhm.
any level of job. How am I going to sort through that as a person? Yes, I have recruiters that help and all of that, but ultimately, like my go-to isn't let me go through 1,000 plus resumes. Let me find someone. No, my first thought is who do I know that might already have some of the skill sets I'm looking for? Who do I know in my network? Or
Right.
who do I know someone who might be able to recommend someone that I know? Because hiring is risky. Like hiring someone you don't know is very risky. Is it problematic? Potentially, but no hiring manager is going to be like, let me look at 20,000 resumes and find someone. They're going to wonder, who do I know? So you want to be top of mind,
Right.
that potential person, so you can make it to the short list. That's how you can beat the system, by being human. And yeah, and I know this might be controversial, but most of the jobs today still are actually filled through networking and not by application, more than 50%.
Ooh.
So you have to keep that in mind. We as humans are still hiring people that we know. Why? Because when we know them, even if it's like someone's recommendation, we are likely going to trust that more. And trust is such a rare currency these days, that it's highly valued. So yeah, get out there, meet people, and yeah, and that's how you beat AI.
Yeah. So it seems that there is no getting away from the fact that AI is going to replace some jobs. It's just a matter
Correct.
of rising above what AI can do.
Yeah, yeah, and I think, to be fair, right? There's the saying that AI is not replacing humans, or AI won't replace you. It's replacing people who can't use AI or something like that.
Yes. Yeah.
I actually find that to be overly optimistic, and
Ooh.
I dislike that. So this is my personal opinion, that I definitely see AI starting to replace some jobs completely. Okay,
Mhm.
like think about the last time you went to an airport or somewhere busy where you started to see a machine that says order here. Have you seen that?
Yes. Yeah.
What happens to that cashier's job? It's gone. Okay, the
Right.
order here machine directly replaces the person who used to take your money. And I'm not saying it's everywhere, every single store, but we're starting to see this trend, right? Have you been to a sushi restaurant where your sushi or your ramen comes on a bot that
Right.
sings to you? Yeah.
Right. 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 Yeah.
So, right? So, guess what happened to the waiters and waitresses? Well, some of their jobs are gone, right?
Right.
And actually, because I travel to different parts of the world, I've seen a lot more adoption of this in Asia, for example.
Hmm.
I went to a dim sum restaurant in Hong Kong, and it's massive. It's like 250 people easily during lunch. Like it's almost like a wedding. I was like, oh my goodness, how are we going to get food? And I
Yeah.
always see, no joke, okay, 5 servers, the whole restaurant. I thought, oh no, it's gonna be a 5 hour lunch. But nope. Like one person brings over your tea and then takes your order, and then the machines, the bots that sing beautiful music too, they deliver the food. And with certain items, certain special items are delivered by humans. And it was like a really weird but beautiful harmony of human and AI.
Right.
And like imagine just 5 servers, but like 2 machines. Before it would have been 25 staff easily, human staff. So I think I mean, I think we need to be more comfortable with the fact that AI is starting to replace some jobs, and AI is replacing a lot of different tasks that we're doing. So how do you get away from that and stay safe? I think you need to start asking yourself, what do I do with my job today?
Hmm.
What percentage of it can AI do right now? What percentage of it do I think AI can do next year? And when that percentage gets to, let's say, 30%, you should start to worry that you need to like upskill yourself, because your boss knows, right? Your boss has invested in this AI for you. It's not free. They're expecting something out of this productivity, right? That could mean maybe we don't backfill every job in this department. That could mean you take on more work. But whatever it is, if AI is starting to do a lot of what you currently do, you have to be worried, right? Like this is a normal thing to do. It's no different than when we start to see jobs getting outsourced to other countries several years ago.
Yes.
When those jobs go away, we started to worry. And so I don't want to create that false sense of comfort, because I think we do need to upskill ourselves really quickly because AI is moving so fast.
Right. Right. Is there anything in the entertainment and the one that we consume, movies, TV shows in Netflix or music platforms, is there anything that is that that anything that doesn't use AI, or it's just all over and we're just not aware of it?
Gosh, I can't think of any, honestly. I can't think of any, and this is crazy. Um, gosh, no. And in fact, I even read some research that said much of the music that we've been hearing, the way they're able to make all this music go viral and trending is because they follow very specific patterns.
Hmm.
And if you boil it down, all the platinum charts music follow very similar patterns, and you just completely, like it's different words and so on, but essentially the patterns are the same, and that's a winning formula.
Yeah.
So we've been listening to, frankly, AI generated music for years without knowing. So it's
Right.
probably more prevalent than we think. And yeah, and like if you think about the images too, like in the movies where we used to have, stuntmen who
Mhm.
can do daredevil kind of things, and now you can use AI for that. But I do wonder, part of me wonder, is that going to create a differentiation in value, right? Provided that we can still kind of tell, or we are required to label something that's AI generated,
Right.
which I hope we will get there someday, because that is hopeful. Is there going to be a big value to, hey, I don't want to watch AI generated stunts. I want to watch real human stunts,
Right.
because I think there's so much, with AI being everywhere, there's now more value to what is rare, which is humans who can do those amazing things.
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah, yeah, and I wonder about that, right? Like Jackie Chan, for example, was doing all these things
Yeah.
without AI
Yeah.
20 years ago,
Yeah.
and do we have that today? Who
Right.
can do the same?
Yeah.
Yes, AI can probably do all the things,
Yeah.
and I
Tom
think the
Cruise is still.
value changes.
Yeah. Tom Cruise still doing it. So I think that's one of the things that
Sure.
amazes me about that guy. Was like he has a real deep commitment to not using AI. So
Yes.
he's still doing
Yes.
his own stunts.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's shift a little bit. But this is, I know this is connected to AI. But what is deep learning and what is AI?
So deep learning is part of AI. And so I think about AI as the bigger circle, and deep learning is a type of AI that uses reinforcement, and it just thinks differently than the general AI, and because of that, it's able to generate better responses
Mhm.
than what we have seen before.
Okay. So then is it, if you combine, so it's a combination, sorry, deep learning is under AI. Is it going to be possible in the future for um, AI with deep learning to recognize human emotions based on images or videos?
Uh, Sort of. So yeah, so we started to see facial recognition software everywhere, right?
Right.
In airports and things like that. And we've even heard about AI interviews,
Yes.
and how they've done that is not that they're just recording your voice in real time. Some of these software actually assess your facial expression, like are you excited, and more importantly, are you telling the truth? Right? More importantly, do you seem like you are not confident, and maybe you are just exaggerating this example, maybe you haven't actually had the experience. So there's a lot that AI has been able to do in that space, but ultimately it can potentially also make mistakes, right? So AI can now, with enough training data, it can recognize if you're smiling or if you're sad and all these things. But cross culturally, right, some cultures express emotions in different ways.
Right.
Maybe I'm not smiling and I'm actually happy. Maybe maybe certain emotions are more acceptable in my culture than others. So with that, that's where biases become really dangerous. Is that it can misinterpret certain facial expressions because of the cultural differences. So yes, definitely detecting emotions, and decoding it to some extent, and even coaching people. I've seen recently a cool use case of AI in teaching people empathy. Believe it or not, so using AI to teach people empathy.
Oh,
So yeah, so imagine certain occupations like doctors, nurses, and teachers, and firemen, where you need to have a level of empathy to do your job well. And how do we train people to become empathetic? If AI itself, it can be empathetic, but AI can know with enough training what sounds empathetic, what is an empathetic word, what is an empathetic response, what is not. Right?
right.
So during this coaching, as these people are getting onboarding and training as a new hire, this AI then trains a proper response or gives you nudges and say, hey, let's say that differently. Can you
Right.
say that in a more empathetic way? Here's an example of an empathetic response, right? And so AI is able to, even though it doesn't have empathy, but
Mhm.
because it knows what empathetic responses sound like, it can teach human to be empathetic, which I thought was, gosh, this is like a weird full circle
I
of some
know.
sort.
Can it then go a step further, and can AI read human behavior and predict who's most likely to succeed, fail, commit a crime? Can it be used by FBI, the police?
We, it's already happened. It's already happening today. Whether or not people like it, it's a different story, right?
Right. Right.
So in many companies, they have a function within HR that focus on data analytics, and there's an expert, psychologist, along with data scientists who use data from the company to predict what kind of candidates are most likely to succeed as a hire here, and
Right.
then what kind of people, what kind of experiences are most likely to succeed for the promotion, right? All those are based on specific data in the company, and yes, there are great ways of using that. There are also potentially risky situations where maybe everyone that's being promoted fall into to the same background. Maybe they went to the same Ivy League school. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
they, belong to the same zip code. Even they live in a nice neighborhood, and suddenly you're replicating that bias and only selecting or recommending people who fit that bill. Definitely that's possible. And as far as predicting crime, there's actually lots of problematic use cases in this space, because if we use historic data, and that's how a lot of these machine learning algorithms are built, it's based on historic decisions. So if historically Black and Hispanic communities are more likely to get committed than commit a crime, or they're more likely to receive harsher sentences. That's already in the system as the bias. And if we use that to replicate, kind of try to predict the future, it's going to only reinforce the past decisions, and that could be very dangerous. So yeah, so I think yes, it's happening in pockets, and a lot of people are not really happy about it. And I think we have to be very careful with decisions that impact people's livelihood.
Right.
Things like things like hiring, things like promotion, compensation. And really, I go back to a phrase I like, which is just because AI can doesn't mean AI should.
Should. It's funny because yesterday during my regular live stream, that's one of the most repeated phrase we were saying. Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah.
And people have a hard time sort of getting their brains around it. So
Yes.
before we talk about your book, this is probably like a fun question I just want to ask you. Based on your years and years of data, collecting, analyzing, and now AI, are humans really unique as we think we are we as unpredictable, unique from each other as we think we really are?
Yes and no. Yes and no. So I'll tell you a funny story. So I've been building machine learning algorithms to predict which employees are going to quit
Mm-hmm.
in the organization, and like when they're going to quit, why they're going to quit, and so on. And so much so that my models actually predicted I was going to quit before I knew. Okay, before I knew. And I was very skeptical, right? One of the times, like I just got a new promotion, had an amazing team, just moved to downtown Chicago, loved the apartment, and my name came up as like most likely to resign in the next 6 months. And then I had to present that to my boss. Okay. So along with all the other things. So imagine how awkward that might be. She's like, Serena, is there something we need to talk about? I said, no, 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 no. Like this is, models are always wrong. Some are useful, right? That's what we say about models. And this one is definitely wrong because, like, I
Mhm.
have no intention of leaving. I love it here. You are a great boss. And but then I explained why the model said I was high risk. So I said, yeah, here's the reasons, right? Like a recent job change, recent relocation, and you and I sit in different offices. Traditionally, those things make someone a higher risk. But I am different because X, Y. Okay, no joke. The next day, I got a call from a headhunter for a job that I eventually accepted. And so I am not sure where, but the model definitely knew something that me, even as a person who built it and the person who was in the model, didn't know. And so I think yes, in some cases we're definitely less predictable,
Right.
but once you have enough data, right, you can draw generalizations. Like like when the person suddenly expanded the team from 5 people to 30 people, and they're all over the place. That's a lot of stress, and they may be more likely to take a call from a recruiter, right? So
Right.
just to explore, who knows? And even though me as a person, I thought none of those things matter to me because I am like I know myself, but
Right.
apparently not.
Right.
Apparently
that,
not.
that was a funny story though. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay, so you do have a book. Let me put it on screen right now. Just give me a second. I have it here. Luckily, your agent was able to send it to me. One second.
Yes.
You do have a book. Can you tell us a little bit about the inclusion equation?
Yeah. Yes, I was gonna say I have a copy here as well. So,
Oh, okay.
um, yeah, so this book is at the intersection of three very controversial hot topics.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
inclusion, mental health, and AI and data. So I wrote the book because I started to notice in all the surveys I ran that teams that have higher levels of inclusion and belonging, they also report being healthier, like mentally and physically. So I thought, huh,
Mm-hmm.
that is interesting. I wonder if there's a connection because I know there's tons of research and books on DEI and inclusion. There's
Mm-hmm.
lots of books on data, of course. There's also lots of books on just well-being for employees, but none really connect inclusion and well-being. So when I started to notice this, and for me, it was always the data that tied it together. That the data showed that you can't have well-being without inclusion. And I asked people to think about the last time you felt excluded at work, the
Right.
last time you weren't invited to a meeting, the last time you weren't invited to a team outing or a happy hour. How did you
Mm-hmm.
feel? Probably not great. Over
Right.
time, if this repeatedly happens, you start to wonder, what is wrong with me? Is my job at risk? So that lack of belonging and inclusion at work is detrimental to our mental health, and which connects to our physical health, and which means we can't perform 100% if we are not feeling well.
Okay.
So all of that is connected, and I show people how to use data to quantify what works and what doesn't work when it comes to inclusion and well-being at work.
Okay. So just to clarify, so I have to be honest, I haven't read a book. I have it. I ordered it. It hasn't
Okay,
arrived. So it's I have ordered it, but not I haven't arrived. So
all good.
just to clarify, you're not saying that people should hire based on like you should hire the minority first. You're not saying that in your
No,
book. Okay.
absolutely not. Yeah.
Okay. So what is it that you're trying to say in terms of DEI and inclusion and data?
Yeah. So one thing is you can't improve what you don't measure. And if you care about performance for employees, which I think everyone does, right? You want people to be productive, you want them to perform, then you must have to care about their well being, right?
Mhm.
Because when we are sick, we can't do anything. So,
Right.
how do you make sure they're healthy? Is creating an environment where people feel like they belong and they're included. And so that's the connection that I draw.
Mhm.
And data, I show that you can measure anything, actually, even fluffy things like inclusion and well being, by asking people, by observing the connection in groups, by observing who shows up to what meetings, by
Mhm.
observing who says more than others on the meeting. Like all these, where AI is great at analyzing, then that paints a clear picture on where you might have problems of inclusion, and that impacts their well-being, which will impact your performance and your bottom line.
Okay. So it's more about improving what you currently have by collecting data and analyzing it the right way.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So
Yeah.
if anybody wants to get a book, how do
Yeah.
please tell
uh,
us we
yeah.
get it.
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target, it's sold pretty much everywhere you get books. You can also find out more on my website, datawithserena.com.
Okay. Yeah, datawithserena.com. I put it in the connect in the description box. That
Awesome.
Dr. Serena, I am so thankful. Thank you very much for joining me today. I learned so much, and you even assured me that it will probably take 100 years for AI to replace me. So I'm good.
Yes. 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 Thank you so
Thank
much
you
for
so
having
much.
me.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye.
you asked great question. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.